Hello, brothers. Welcome back to another edition of The Gentleman's Journey. I'm here with a very special guest today, and brother Brian Heil, graduated from Michigan, aka Alpha Epsilon, in 1980, and is currently the president of the Epsilon Trustee Corporation. Brian, how are you doing today?
Pleasure to be here, brother.
Thank you so much for being here. We truly do appreciate you sitting down with us. Once again, if you've seen any of our previous episodes that are currently being released, we are at the 180th convention in Raleigh, North Carolina at the Marriott Town Center. Very glad to be here. I've started most of these off asking our fellow brothers what it's been like to be here at the convention, what convention means to you. So let's start there.
Well, I just got here, so I can't comment, but I think this is number 40 for me, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to look it up tonight. Look forward to it. Look forward to being with you, young brothers, especially. That's my focus.
I think it's just a great way for young brothers to not only connect with each other, but with alumni as well. And I feel like, again, that's what keeps you coming back all those 40 times. Yeah,
absolutely.
Just being able to just sit down and have those conversations that you wouldn't get to have otherwise. And, you still have row conference, you still have things that you can do, our outdoor leadership retreat, or different various programs. But just getting to sit down at convention, I feel like it's a different experience. Definitely glad to be here for my first one. So just to start off, from your early life on, once you got into college, what made you want to rush a fraternity, and what specifically brought you to Chi Psi?
I think I have a common story with a lot of brothers where I wasn't rushing a fraternity. I ended up in a dormitory that was one of the lesser dormitories due to a prank of my brother. I have two older brothers. One of them is a Michigan man, not a Chi Psi. And he put me in that lesser dormitory as a joke, and I signed up for it, probably the first person in Michigan history to do that. And I met two very special young men, Carl Krecky and David Shepard, who did rush Chi Psi as freshmen. I showed up in Ann Arbor as a 17-year-old and certainly had no business rushing at that age. And they did, and then the next year they rushed me when I wasn't really interested in being in a fraternity, didn't know what fraternities were about. And I think that that's something that we should always look at and think about maybe the less common fraternity man might be the common man we want. At least I think that way.
I'm right there with you. I was the same way. A lot of my own pledge brothers were the same way. You get into college, everything feels, gotta be honest, a little scary. You don't know where to go. You don't know who's being genuine and who is not. Rush is a very different process. A lot of people put on facades and that kind of thing. What really drew you just to get involved with our fraternal brotherhood? You obviously said the circumstances of the common story you shared that you didn't want to rush and you would ultimately get involved. What kept you around? What stood out about this brotherhood?
I used the line more than once that we were a group of uncommon characters of character with a common bond. The group was not at all similar. A lot of different people from different backgrounds, but what they accomplished collectively, and what an alpha can do if they put their mind to it, and everyone's going in the same direction and making good decisions and having good discussion about it and making the decision to do what they're going to do. I saw that going on, whereas many of the other fraternities, in my opinion, were disorganized and no one really cared. The brothers at the lodge cared what was going on, cared about each other.
Absolutely.
And really accomplished things to a common goal. And I really still do appreciate it a great deal.
As we mentioned, you're an Epsilon grad. As you know very well, you guys are blessed with one of the most beautiful lodges in this country, and beyond lodges, just obviously we don't refer to them as houses, but if you think about any fraternal organization's house, it's right up there, tip top of the list. It's beautiful, but as you do know, the lodge is much more than just brick and mortar. It's way more than just a building. Tell me about what the lodge has been to you and why it's still so important that we place emphasis on it today.
Well, as a 40-some-year corporation member, it's been a lot of hard work, so I appreciate your compliments, but it's been a combined effort with a lot of wonderful people that are on the corporation board, a lot of wonderful alumni who supported it. My immediate thought when someone asks about the lodge and the thought of home comes to mind. It was our home, and it still is our home, and it's every brother's home who visits there. Is a wicked February evening where you've been out studying and the snow's blowing sideways and you walk in that front door and it's warm, and there's a fire in the fireplace, and there's nothing but the fire, but by the silhouette of the different individuals and their laugh, you can pick out every single man and know who they are. And that sense, it makes the hair on my arm stand up. Just you were a part of that, and you were fortunate to be a part of that. And that's the thought that comes to my mind. It's just a wonderful time and a wonderful place, and I hope to have that available to others.
Absolutely. I mean, from what I'm hearing from you, it really sounds like it's very surreal, something that you can't really, you can't really encapsulate, can't really define in words. It's something that you just got to experience.
Well, for the older alumni, such as myself, they'll remember bathrooms that didn't function and roofs that leaked and toilets that didn't work and things like that, and boilers that didn't boil. So we've done a lot of work to correct those things, so it's gotten a lot better. But even so, with all those flaws, we still had a wonderful time, and I can only hope that those that are there now and in the future, with the improvements we're making, will even have a better time.
I really did enjoy what you said about how you characterize the lodge as being home. Yep. It's not just home for people who are Epsilon grads like yourself. It's home to any brother, and you guys would welcome with open arms.
Great pride in it. I can remember Mother's Weekend and my mother showing up. It's a cute story where she came out of the ladies' room and she had her handkerchief over her face, and I said, "Is there a problem in there?" She says, "Well, whoever cleaned it used so much bleach, we're going to pass out." I mean, we were so worried. But there was so much pride in the lodge, and still is, and that's central to an Epsilon brother, and hopefully to all brothers, that they take great pride in their facilities and the reflection it has on the community, whether it's university or the alumni or just visitors. Really central and core to the Epsilon experience is the pride in the lodge and making sure the guests are well taken care of, and the brothers are all well-mannered and gentlemanly.
Absolutely. As you know, brother, when you really think about the sands of time and the undergrad experience, they do fly particularly fast. And
Boy, do they.
I think, you having graduated, in 1980, you can attest to just how, fast all of this time has flown by, but particularly those 4 years. I would love to hear about some very positive experiences that you really felt, not only just in the lodge itself, but just in this fraternal brotherhood at Epsilon, and how those really carried with you for the rest of your life up until now.
Just one experience that comes to my mind is when my father passed away at 91 and lived a full life and was healthy and had all his faculties. But at the funeral home, the first 7 people to come to visitation were Kaisai's. And my 2 older brothers were standing there and hadn't had a visitor yet. And my one brother looks at me and goes, "I just don't get it." And I remember I said, "Well, in some ways you're not supposed to." Just that was so moving to me that those men took the time to come and see me, and that's always right in the front of my mind. I make an effort to make sure that I'm reciprocating that kind of attention. Stanley Birch talked about love, and that's what it is. Some people are like, yeah, it's kind of tough to say. No, you actually have love for that guy, and you care that much about him and how he's doing, and ask him, "How are you doing? How was today?" My mother always said, "Everybody has something. Make sure you ask."
Absolutely. And I feel like, again, you're just describing the power of brotherhood.
Absolutely. And it's hard to put a bond into words, and we all know that, but there are people, I think, that have a lesser bond, and that's unfortunate for them, but I can't give them what I have. I can share it with young men who want to make the effort as I have, and hopefully will. But for someone to come from the outside and say, "Gee, I wish I had friends like yours," and I say, "Gee, I hope you do."
Yeah.
I hope you do, because they're my brothers.
And again, it's not, when we think about the word friends, I feel like at times can be seasonal, but those who you consider family stick around for the long haul. And I think you, as a man who's been very involved for quite a while now, that those people, have stuck by your side and will keep to that. And I think that's just so important. And though it may be difficult to articulate.
It is, even for Brother Heil.
even for you, Brother Heil, if you could define it in your own words, from your own personal experience, what has brotherhood meant to you personally? Because I feel like every man may have a slightly different answer.
I think foremost is to care, to ask, to care about that individual, and they know that it's sincere. You're not being hollow, and there's nothing worse than an insincere concern or question or fellowship. And to help, to actually do something, to put your words into action. Actions and deeds. Words get it started, but it's actions and deeds. And the respect that you give those who have done those actions and deeds. Not to disrespect the others, they may have conflicts or other things, but you know that that individual really tried and really meant sincerely that they were concerned. Like you said, it's hard to put it into words.
It is, and like I said, it may differ from brother to brother, but it is still very important. Just about, like you said, you spoke on the caring, the listening, the understanding, all these very positive values that I feel like go beyond brotherhood. Just make us good people, not just good gentlemen, good people. I
talk about that often. The elevated friendship we talk about, but how 30 plus men, all of great character and sharp-witted. You had to be on your toes at the lodge, and you learned to speak extemporaneously because of that, and to be quick on your feet. And you can't teach that, but you experience it. I think of one of my pledge brothers, Bruce Terrier, who became a very busy MD and a large practice. He came back to the lodge after many years, sat next to me at dinner, and he said, it's like I was here a week ago. And we don't realize necessarily how much of what Chi Psi was is who Chi Psi has made us, and how that's part of who we are, our fiber, and how we behave as gentlemen and how we discuss things. Michael Murray just did a piece that was very accurate about how it taught him things in business, and it's part of our DNA, and hopefully we're passing that on and letting others grow in the same direction.
Absolutely, and I think though we may all have different journeys, not to name drop podcasts, but though we may have different journeys, different paths to getting where we are, we stay anchored to those values, and that makes us who we are as a fraternal brotherhood. And I feel like no matter how many years pass, no matter how many new generations, new pledge classes come in, just new men in general come into this fraternal brotherhood, we remain consistent because we care so much about those values.
That's our Achilles heel. Our weakness is 2 years in turnover. We have to be absolutely consistent in new member programming and taking men under our wing, whether they're, I think about my bid when I was approached to receive a bid. It wasn't the young men that rushed me or the men that I knew well from my high school. It was the two most senior brothers in the lodge who came all the way up to my out-of-the-way dormitory to sit on my bed and talk to me about the responsibility of accepting a bid to Chi Psi, and that it wasn't something to be taken lightly. And I had hardly talked to these young men. They were big. Just, I was hardly shaving, and here these two guys show up and want to invite me to become a member of Chi Psi, and I'm like, man, don't forget when you're new, you may have reservations, and if you're an alumnus or a senior brother at your alpha, don't forget just the power of some kindness, of seeking out a young man to talk to him, or when you see him on campus to stop and not just wave at him, but to spend a moment with him. It's very important in my opinion.
I think it just sends a very unique message that, again, sets us apart from other fraternities, other organizations. When you have that culture of older gentlemen kind of fizzling out of activity in the fraternity or not being super interested, that's what the culture tells you. But within our own culture, it's, again, not only a lifetime commitment, but something we really just consider to our last breath, that we will cling to these values, that we will be committed to not only new members, but current alumni, and really anyone in any category. And again, that's something I take with me and try to remember. You can just look at this convention. Look how many people are here of different ages, different walks of life.
And we're still standing.
And we're still standing. Since 1841, still standing strong.
I meant the old brothers, but anyway.
Hey, I was just talking about the fraternity, but honestly, I think we got to the same place, so it's okay. But still standing indeed, regardless of how we got there. So now, though we do strive for certain goals and we strive to be certain people, we are obviously imperfect. We're prone to mistakes, just like any other man, and I think that's part of what being a man is.
It's part of growing, absolutely.
And I think what binds a lot of us together, in that fraternity, is failure, our mistakes, what we've done, and I think that connects us. Vulnerability is, just part of who we are, and that binds people together, I think, rather than drives them apart. So, what advice would you give your college self from the man you are today? Like, what would you have done differently? Because I'm sure there are a lot of undergrad men that are in your shoes or that are experiencing similar things that you may have.
What would I have done differently? You got me on that one. My Chi-Sci journey was not something I expected. I think that some individuals go to campus and are expecting to become a member of a fraternity, so it was totally a direction I wasn't planning on. So that was a big change, if you will, or new adventure for me. What would I change? Not too much. I don't have many regrets.
That's good.
Few. And those that I have, I've worked to amend. So it's not easy. Fred Pfister, who's Epsilon 1950, and he was younger than I am now and very active at the lodge when I was there. I've been out of the lodge 41 years. He'd been out of the lodge 30 years when I was there. He used to say, if it was free and if it was easy, every fraternity would be great. It's not free and it's not easy. It's hard work. I go back to that, the respect that those that worked hard and did the right things and made it better. It's impossible for us to just leave it the same. The finite level of that is just, you can't fly that level. So it's either going down or it's going up. You don't want it to go down, so you better be making it better. There's possibly another guy who's not pulling as hard as he could, so you need to make up for him and do your part. So are you leaving it better than you found it?
Of course, and I think that's definitely, I think it just reemphasizes how we are a collective body. We move as one unit, and I think accountability is so important, especially in today's culture, keeping your other brothers up. I mentioned yesterday that how grateful I was that we've started really taking a focus on mental health, adding mental health chairs to various alphas. I just feel like the box that we're constrained to now as men is something that is not talked about a lot, and I feel like it discourages a lot of men from being open about how they feel and really leaning into that fraternal brotherhood. So definitely something I'm proud of, and again, just one of the infinite reasons I'm proud to be a part of this fraternity. Why to you is the idea of fraternity so important? We spoke on brotherhood earlier. Why is fraternity important to you?
I think of Oliver Rowe. He used to comment. He was former number 7.
Absolutely.
Who is taking care of or who's looking out for the college man? Here, a young man's left his home. Biggest change in his young life, most possibly, is attending university. Who's there looking out for him? And a properly run and executed fraternity experience, whether it's Chi-Sci or somewhere else. And I have a number of good friends who are Greeks and not Chi-Scis, and they're fine men, and they had a wonderful college fraternity experience, which I think is part of it. It fills that need. But again, for every good one, there's probably a bad one. So, and I speak for my own alpha, which we had to shut down. I mean, I think about that probably every day, and I think about Vern Istock, our number 7 at the time, coming in, and the first official act that he had to do was close his own alpha. It was unfortunate, and it needed to happen. There was ample opportunity given and ample pushback from that opportunity, so the right decision was made eventually. But if you're not going to do it right, then you shouldn't be doing it.
Of course not, and I do think that though those decisions are obviously very tough to make. I mean, just thinking about Vern, how difficult that must have been, like you said, for his first act. However, there's still, what's beautiful about here is there's still room for redemption. There's still room for reconciliation, as we're seeing now with the colony rising. And I think that's so encouraging to know that even though we are men of mistakes, and that there's parts of our collective body that can be led astray, we're not going to leave it that way. We're going to leave it better than we found it.
There are probably Epsilon brothers of my era who are going to watch this who are still not happy of Brother Heil with his hockey stick, encouraging them to do their work assignment at the lodge. But
hockey stick?
Indeed. It was a motivational tool.
Okay. In A Few Good Men, it was a baseball bat. So for you, it was the hockey stick.
Well, we are in Michigan, brother. Well, we're in North Carolina right now.
Yeah, that's valid. I hockey. Well, I guess it is big up north, though. Again, I don't mean to get too far sidetracked, but I'm from Louisville. You won't find one bit of hockey in Louisville except for like one little ice rink.
But they make baseball bats there.
We do, but we just have a AAA affiliate team. So thanks, Reds, I guess. But so that leads me into my next thing. Now you can paraphrase, of course, but what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Best piece of advice I ever received. A more recent one was from my father before he passed away. He said, and I'll share this with my brothers of my age, don't wait too long to retire. The first 5 years of retirement are a hell of a lot better than the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot to that. I think there's people that don't hang up their boots or spurs soon enough. And when they get done, they realize they don't have any time for family and friends and everything else when they're not retired. I don't know. Something else about advice. Smart people don't need it, and foolish people don't heed it. So I'm not a big person on giving out advice. I'm more about action and deeds, and if they care to join me, great. And if they don't, well, get out of my way.
Not a bad mindset to have by any means. I do feel like one thing, again, I've noticed that's been so integral in this fraternity is, the mentorship that takes place. You mentioned how, when you got your bid, you have several older brothers coming up to you and explaining that to you, and how that would maybe perhaps be seen as unorthodox or unusual in today's culture. I experienced something very, very similar. Our current number one was the one that really explained it to me, and I was just like, why is he taking the time to talk to me? But again, it's all about that mentorship at the individual level, and I think we actually promote a culture where taking younger people under your wing and gathering us together is emphasized.
The power of that, and just sharing and caring about that person teaches them, and then they're doing the same thing.
You mentioned a good bit about your mother and father. Who would you say has impacted your life the most?
Oh, certainly my father. I'm his clone. Born on the same day. Interesting story about my father. I was having difficulty in college, and he and I both had the same birthday. And we would often talk about, what was my dad doing when he was 20 or 21 and the exact same age. And I was complaining about the difficulties of engineering school. And my dad stopped. He says, well, let me think. What was I doing? Oh, yeah, people were shooting at me. And my father was a World War II veteran. So it put things in perspective. I never forgot that complaining probably isn't going to get you a whole lot. It didn't with my father. And he put me in my place quite quickly. And I never forgot that. And I think about that when I think about complaining to someone. Maybe you should take the situation into your own hands and correct it instead of complaining about it.
I feel like just blindly and complaining or, just doing it with empty words is really useless, even though I would be hypocritical for saying that because I've done it at times.
Although I did complain about this interview, seeing how the people who had recruited me had not yet done their interview. Hopefully they're listening. I'll make sure that they follow up.
Got to do that. So moving into another portion, we talked about kind of the binding power of failure, how vulnerability makes us all really who we are, teaches us some of our best life lessons. But every man also has strengths to do that. What would you say, brother, what would you say your strengths are? And also, along with that, what's a weakness you think you've really worked on correcting a lot of your life or worked on alleviating?
Oh, I think my strength is problem solving. Typically, mechanical type things. That's what I did for my career. Not listening well enough. I think we all need to work on listening, especially if you're dealing with someone and you think, you're so smart and you know the answer, but it's important for that person to let them finish. And even if they're astray, you can't be rude and you can't be inconsiderate. And I often find myself, wanting to answer their question for them or cut them off, and I work on that continually. You got to be patient. You got to be a good listener. But hopefully, there are brothers who are far more strategic than I am, and they belong doing the planning. I'm more on the execution side of things and getting things done. And I recognize that, so I shouldn't be trying to be both. And I think that that's important for people to realize what their strengths are and leverage those, and to realize where they're not necessarily as strong and others are, and to let them lead those efforts and not be feeling any worse for it or lesser for it. We all can't be everything, and we may think we can, but we've got to be honest with ourselves. If Eric Hildinger was here, he'd say, don't kid yourself.
You really just struck me down there. I think in the first part, you just categorized me to a pretty fair extent. Isn't that slightly ironic? You have the interviewer, the one you're supposed to listen, always thinking about what they're going to say next.
Well, brother, I've been doing this for 44 years, and you've been doing it for 2.5.
How am I doing?
You're doing pretty darn well. Pretty darn good, I'd say.
I'm doing my best, but as I've discussed with other brothers, I think it can seem very small to think about what you're going to say next and really be caught up in the moment.
I did enjoy the fact that you said that others wanted to know what the questions are. Goodness sakes.
Yeah.
That's no fun. Not for you or me.
No, but it's okay.
Plus, I'm sure when those others come through, you'll have new questions for them.
For the most part, yes. We do like to interchange a few, especially in the beginning.
I'll help you write it.
We do ask everyone like what led you to Chi Psi, but I think all the other ones mostly are interchanged, which I think is nice. But again, I think even though people really often think they have something valuable to say, and myself included.
Oh my gosh, alpha meetings were, twice as long as they needed to be. We all thought we were important. We all had something important to say. I'm sure that that's still going on. I used to think about that during every alpha meeting. How many other generations sat here and listened to the same brother carry on? They'd probably say that about me. So.
Well, again, if you're executing, it's a little different, but I think it can just be difficult again as men to let people lead us. We're prideful individuals, some healthy, some not, and I think that though it can be good to want to lead, sometimes you need to take a step back at times and let others lead as well. And you touched on that with strengths and weaknesses. Know what you can do and know what you're capable of.
I think about elections, and there may be one or two brothers who really strongly want a position, and there's only one when the election ends. And that brother who doesn't get that position can't hold a grudge and can't do anything to hold that other brother back or hold the lodge back. You just move on. Democracy and progress and happening. So I can remember some of that. I can remember being disappointed. I wasn't ready to take on certain positions, and I wasn't elected, although I thought I should have been. My time came, and for younger brothers watching this, theirs will too. Don't let that discourage you. It's the other person's time. The alpha has spoken. You'll get your opportunity.
Absolutely. Again, I think it's so important to just recognize strengths and weaknesses, and I think recognizing what you're weak at is also a strength in and of itself. Knowing, again, not like knowing your place in a bad sense, but like knowing where you can contribute value to. And I think there's always going to be someone who can really contribute something to a certain area, and there's always going to be an area that they may have trouble with. And that's where, again, your next brother steps in. And I think that's really important. What are 3 words you would use to describe yourself?
Trustworthy.
Excellent.
Caring.
Mm-hmm.
Something.
You're pretty funny.
Physical. Yeah.
You're pretty comedic. I mean, it's what is it? A defining quality? You tell me?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't realize how big I am till I see a picture of myself next to someone else. And my brothers, I have brothers that are bigger than me.
Wow.
I know that other people say, well, God, you're big. So I guess I would add that for the sake of the others. I don't think of that. I think of you all. I had a young brother ask me, well, Brother Heil, do you think, feel, or whatever differently? It's like, when you walk in the lodge, I'm 19. You're looking out. You don't feel 62. You don't feel 90. You feel like you always have felt. And hopefully you will as well. So it doesn't tarnish with age. So anyway, 3 things. Hopefully,
no, they're good.
I might ask other people what those 3 things are for me. I'd be interested.
I remember having to do that for my college applications. Like that's a big thing. They ask you like describe yourself in 5 words, and I got a lot of the same. But it's definitely weird, not in a bad way, but weird to hear other people say like what they think of you and see how closely it aligns with yourself. Me just being the egocentric jerk I am, I'm guessing mine wouldn't come very close, but it's all right. It's all right. All right. So moving into our last couple, we asked this to all of our guests, but what is your biggest fear, Brother Brian? What is your biggest fear?
Oh, goodness. Probably letting down my family, making sure that I'm being the best husband and father I can be. That's my overriding responsibility, in my opinion. Providing for them, taking care of them, listening to them. I'm very proud of my children, what they've accomplished. I tell people, I thought I'd have really great kids. I have amazing kids. And I'm so proud of them and the people and the young women they've become and are, and how they act and treat other people. And it's interesting, all 3 of my daughters had a very good Greek experience, which I'm very proud of. And I think that's part of it too for them, to have a quality Greek experience for them.
Sure. So devoted father and husband, that's obviously a really big deal to you. And again, taking that into these last couple, I mean, tell us about you. It's easy to talk about a career or a passion, but like, just tell me a little bit about fatherhood. So you said 3 girls. Are you a girl dad?
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
You know, it's obviously.
I'll put my 3 daughters up against any. They probably, they know every dadism I've ever shared only about 50 million times. So you prepare them, you're worried, but I'm not worried about them now. I get criticized a little bit. Dad, you don't call that much. It's like, well, I know you're doing fine. I'm not worried about you.
Sure. But even early on, like what?
Oh, I knew nothing. I was
Of
the
course.
youngest in my family. And it was all boys. So yeah, little girls.
It's a change up.
I had a lot to learn. Absolutely.
I
Wouldn't
feel-
change it for anything, though. We had a lot of fun.
Sure. I feel like a lot of new parents give a common piece of advice that you kind of have to learn as you go, because there's nothing that you can read that'll prepare you for it.
Well, we had to read. We didn't have, click on a phone app to find out why this is this way. You had the Dr. Spock book. It was about this thick, and it was all dog-eared by the time your 3rd child came along. You looked everything up. What do you feed them? What time do you feed them? What's this rash look like? Should I be worried about this?
I think it's, again, I'm not a father, obviously, but I do think that we have a lot of young gentlemen that have either just graduated or are kind of new, fresh alumni that are going to be dads in the very near future, and really probably are scared, just generally fearful, anxious, and it's healthy. But I definitely think, again, I think you would attest to this, that it's just a journey. You're going to make mistakes. You have to concede that you're not going to do it perfectly, but that you're going to, love your kids and hopefully your spouse unconditionally, and you're going to do the best to make it work. So I definitely think that's super, super important. Okay. Last question.
All right. Me or yours?
Yours. Is a cereal a soup? Why or why not?
A cereal.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a television show.
With milk. If that wasn't obvious.
It's breakfast.
That's your term. It's breakfast. I guess there's no breakfast soups, is there?
No.
No. All right, so you're anti-soup. It is not a soup.
No.
Are you saying that right into this camera right now that cereal is not a soup.
All of you slurping your Captain Crunch right now, that is breakfast.
You heard it here from my brother, Brian Heil. Thank you so much, Brian, for being with us today. I really do appreciate you sitting down with me, and I look forward to spending more time with you, hopefully, at this convention. If he's not tired of me yet, we will be back in the near future with another episode, brothers. I hope you have a blessed week, and we'll see you next time.
Where do I pick up my check?